Hello and welcome back to Ruler 101. This week we're looking at Puss in Boots, one of my personal favorites and one of the more unique rulers as far as mechanics and strategies goes. As you could probably tell, he revolves around the Three Musketeers resonators and does things with that sort of thing. But without any further ado, let's get into what he actually does. So he's a green ruler, fairy tale cat. J activate, pay 9. If you control Athos, the Three Musketeers, you may pay 3 less to play this ability. The same is true for Aramis, the Three Musketeers, and Porthos, the Three Musketeers. And he has a normal ability, continuous, you may pay 1 less to play Musketeer Resonators. This makes all of the Musketeers really good. And there is, I think, total 5 actual Musketeer type Resonators in the game, but 2 of them are from Vingolf 1, and they are not really Musketeer feeling. However, there is one of them can be used for some tricky nonsense, which I will get into later. But first, let's look at his J-Ruler side. Catan, the Bayoneteer, a 1800 J-Ruler with Pierce and Target Attack. That is strong. Pierce allows you to push through so much damage, and the base attack being at 1000, even during his time that was really high, and now it's pretty average, but it's still really strong with Pierce because he's never going to get a useless attack. Like, he's never just going to get chunked. It's impossible. But the defensive 800 does leave him a little bit vulnerable, but there are steps you can take to make him to help protect him, that is. For example, Windsclid Refuge, Regalia to buff him, or standard buffs, but we'll get into that later. He also has another ability. He also has another ability. Musketeer Resonators you control gain +4/+4. That makes all the Musketeers' stats go from to oh, wow, okay. I'm gonna have to deal with that. But let's get into what they actually are. Starting with Aramis, the Three Musketeers. A green 500/500 Fairy Tale Musketeer Resonator for 2 green and 1. Now, with Puss in Boots, he is a 2 cost, and you might think 2 costs for a 5/5, that's not that great. But then his Enter ability makes things really cool. Enter, produce green for each Musketeer Resonator you control. So, if you play him, you're always going to produce at least 1 green. But if you have even 1 more, he's a free card in Puss in Boots. That's so good. Like, and when he flips, or when Gettin flips and makes his stat line go up to 9/9 as a free 9/9, he is so good. But the next one is a bit lackluster. It's Porthos, attack 700, defense 400, and he has Pierce. His stat line makes him really, really killable. But because he reduces the J activate cost, and because he naturally has Pierce, you can kind of ignore it and go around it. So it's okay as is. But as I said, his defense is going to make things a bit hard for you. But if you have Catan on his J-Ruler side, Porthos is about to be an 11/800, which is significantly stronger with natural Pierce. Basically, all his Musketeers become really cool when you have Catan on the field. But the last Musketeer, Athos, the Three Musketeers. A 4 cost, 2 green and 2 for an 800/800 Musketeer. And he has Enter, search your main deck for an addition Resonator, reveal it, put it in your hand. If your ruler is Puss in Boots or your J-Ruler is Catan, the Bayoneteer, you may add it to this card instead, then shuffle your main deck. This ability is busted. This ability is so unbelievably, ungodly amazing. He's just so good because he activates, because the Enter activates if you have Puss in Boots on his ruler side. Which, if it were just the J-Ruler side, it would be a lot harder to use. But as he is, Puss in Boots reduces the cost by 1, so he is a 3 cost, 2 green and 1, 800/800 naturally, but when he enters, you can search your deck for any addition Resonator, any of them, and put them on him. That gives you access to crazy stat lines. For example, I'll just bring up, I'll go into them more in depth later, but you could bring up an Amino Hubba Kiri and boost the stat line to a 12/12 and then give him a kick-ass ability, all for 3 will. that is balls out amazing. Especially if you cheat him into play really early using Aramis. Or, like, a turn 2 Dargatan is pretty possible with how the Musketeers work and the cost reduction and that sort of thing. But there's a fourth Musketeer. One who's very tricky in how she works. And one who can combo with another card and just blow up any sort of balance. And that is Ryoma Sakamoto. A 2-cost 400/400 Musketeer that has the ability, pay 1, produce 1 will of any attribute. Will cycling. That's all she does. With Puss in Boots, she is a 1-cost Musketeer, which is really important, because turn 1, you can drop a Ryoma, turn 2, you drop an Aramis, Aramis pays for himself, and then you can, say you started with 2 Aramis, okay, just a weird, really good hand. That happens more often than you think, especially with mulliganing. You start off 1 Ryoma, 2 Aramis, and 1 Athos. Turn 1, you play the Ryoma. Turn 2, you play Aramis. He pays for himself, then you play the other Aramis off that Aramis. Then that Aramis produces 3, and then you can play Athos. And then Athos enters, gets his ability, and just is a turn 2 bomb that just came out of nowhere, and your opponent's like, oh, well, fuck. But that's not even the limit for Ryoma. Ryoma because her ability is technically an activate ability, you could abuse it with Illusionary Demonic Globe the Earth, a 0-cost Regalia, as most are, and it has Rest, Produce Moon. Spend this will only to play Activate abilities of J Resonators, Judgment abilities of Gil Lapis, or God Art abilities of Gil Lapis. So, if you have a Ryoma, and you have a Globe, you have 1 free will out of nowhere that you just got for no reason. That is so cool, because you can do some busted shit with it. If you get the perfect hand, you can potentially throw out an Athos turn 1. But that has to be the absolute perfect hand with with other variables, so that's not super possible. But it's still really, really, really good. Like, oh my god. As far as Resonators, that's about all you really want to run in a Puss in Boots. That's his support. You may run some others like a Gretel or a Morgiana or a Tama, just other sort of green good shit. But aside from that, you probably are running Regalia as one of the means to keep Dargatan alive. One of the good ones is Death Scythe, just the +2/+2, and taking abilities away from your opponent is really good. Maribel helps with keeping him just alive in general. Then you have things like Apollo, because a flying Pierce 1800 is freaking scary. But after that, you have the additions that you're putting on Athos. And I usually run just a bunch of weird different ones. Usually one-ofs, just because I don't ever want to have a handful of additions and no Resonators, you know? But some of the key ones are the Musketeers Edition, which he's meant to grab, which he was designed to grab, but you're probably not going to get it, because it's a 1-cost, 1 green. Added Resonator gains +4/+0. If it's a Musketeer, it also gains First Strike and Pierce. So, you know that Ryoma you played turn 1? It's now an 800/400 with Pierce. Have fun. Also, First Strike makes it so the survivability of, say, Porthos or Ryoma or even Aramis just goes through the roof, because they're no longer trading with other Resonators. And the Pierce, just don't chump block me anymore. But then we'll get into Amino Kiri, which is the thing you're going to search with Athos 90% of the time, probably. It gives him +4/+4, so it turns him into a 12/12, and its other ability is whenever added Resonator deals damage to a Resonator your opponent controls, this card deals that much damage to that Resonator's controller. So, he's already a big beefy monster, but this completely eliminates any sort of chump blocking that he can do, or that you can do. You have to kill him with a spell or blow him up some other way, because even if you trade, you're going to take 12 to the face, and if you chump, you're still taking 12 to the face. It makes blocking him virtually impossible. And if you like tack on a Musketeers bayonet in addition to that, giving him pierce, you can just make all blocks completely useless. Or with his first strike, you can just make him so he's super safe and just swing in and be a monster. That makes him the powerhouse of the deck, basically. But then you have some of the more utility ones. Longinus, the Holy Lance. It gives plus 500, plus 500. Cannot be targeted by darkness spells or abilities, and prevent all damage that would be dealt to it by darkness cards. So, if you know your opponent's running like a Mikage or a Stoning to Death type setup, you can grab this and just, they can't deal with her. Athos anymore. Athos, Aramis. And then you have things like Magic Matchstick. Add a Resonator, gain Swiftness and First Strike. If you absolutely need to get an attack in, that it really works for that. Like, you could just search the Matchstick. Usually just run one so you can pop it out. Swiftness attack in your face out of nowhere. Ha-ha! Or you can run, like, a Protection of the Seraph. Add a Resonator, cannot be attacked or targeted by spells or abilities your opponent controls. My personal secret tech that I love running in these, Musketeer decks, is Bind of Gravity. This card is so cool. So it's 1 black, right? And it has an enter ability, the classic enter ability, so Athos won't trigger it when he pulls it out. But rest, added Resonator. Continuous, added Resonator cannot recover during recovery phase. So he doesn't recover anymore. But and you might think, oh, that's fucking terrible. But it has an activate ability. Pay 3, recover added Resonator. Later in the game, this can give you extra attacks out of nowhere. You only really want 1, and maybe search it out. But because he can search it out and negate its enter ability, and just put him on it, you attack, you pay 3, you attack, you pay 3, you attack, you pay 3, you attack, you pay 3. All of that is amazing. Like, especially when you combine it with the Will Abuse with Ryoma and the Illusionary Demonic Globes, you can get some crazy attacks in. Another card that I just run, it's not an edition Resonator, it's one of the new editions, Flying Cloud. As long as this is not bestowed and your J ruler is wind, it gains +2/+2 in flying. So just making Dargatan a 12/10 flying Pierce. Just, okay, it's good. It's just solid. And you can bestow it to your other Musketeers. Well, just Aramis, Porthos, and Athos, in order to give them +2/+2 in flying as well. And believe me, a 16/16 flying Amino Hubba Kiri wielding Athos is bullshit. Or 14/14, but it's bullshit. It's so strong. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. That's about it for support type. You might want to run like some cancels or something just to help protect your guys, but besides that, you're mainly just running this arsenal of equipment and these really cheap resonators to smash all that equipment on and go, be free, my minions. That about does it for the Puss in Boots deck. I'd probably run something a bit like this, and you, as always, you can find the deck list in the description. And let me know what you think. Do you have any secret tech that you use for Puss in Boots? Or what do you think of Puss in Boots as a ruler? And in the future, do you think you'd like to see more super niche type rulers like it, where it's got this strategy that it does and it does it really well, but it's not really, it can't really go out and branch out into other types of decks, but it's still really cool? Just let me know what you think. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye!